Lights, camera, action. All right, there's not really lights. There is an iPad, but the action is happening in public speaking classes. Now, I'm not here to judge why you came to this conference. It's a trust-free, no judgment zone. Everyone has different motives of the reason they choose to come to a conference. But my hope is that you came to this conference for the same reason that I wanted to come to the conference, which is to learn new things to put into our classroom, to have and improve our educational process. So I'm Professor Corff, and I have been a professor for 30 years. I know I look 21, but it's true. But before I was Professor Corff, I, like many of you, had to go for a job interview. When I got the job interview, I decided I was going to do some research, and I came up with the top 5 universities. The top 2 were Harvard and Penn State at that time. I picked up the phone, I called Harvard, and I began to have a conversation. I remember Margie North. And we made a connection, and I wanted to know, what do you do in your public speaking classes at Harvard that I might be able, if I got the job, to put in my classes? Well, through that relationship, I got the job. I became Professor Corff at Oklahoma City Community College, and I was able to go to Harvard. I was invited to speak in her class, and I was invited to also participate. I got to see what they were doing. They were recording their students so the students could watch themselves and then critique themselves to make progress. Well, I got very excited about that. When I came back to OCCC, I decided we're going to implement that. So I called my IVS, Instructional Video Services team, and we came up with a big clunky camera back in the day, and I had to have a team that would come in and they would record the speeches of my students. Then my students had to sign up to come watch it on the computer. It just wasn't sustainable. And so what that produced was exactly what I want to talk about today. Technology, such as the iPad, and that implementation that we finally were able to do. Here's the thing. Volleyball and technology. How do those two things go together? Well, my daughter was in volleyball. She actually went to college as a volleyball girl. But before then, you had to record at club over and over so that you could submit that to try to get her to her college of choice. Back in the day, we had the cell phones, and then it was when the iPads first came out. I saw this mom at a volleyball club moment, and she was holding it, and she was recording, and I was appropriately peeking at her, and I saw that she did something with it, which appeared to be emailing. So when we were done, I walked over, and I said, "Hey, I saw you using, what is that?" And she said, "Well, it's the new iPad." And I said, "Oh, well, what does it do?" She said, "Everything your phone does." And I said, "Can you send emails from it?" She said, "Yes, I just sent this video to a friend of mine." Oh my goodness, all the bells and whistles came on. I'm like, how can I use this in my classroom? How can I take the archaic of the camera and the whole team that has to come in there? How can I get it to my students? So the implementation process began. What I did was I got with our team, used our technology fees that we already pay, and I bought the first iPad at Oklahoma City Community College, the very first one. I remember opening up the box, we looked at it, we figured it out, and then became the process of, okay, I can record the students, but how do I get their speeches to them so that they can look at them and make the progress they need? Well, my IVS team and my IT team came together and they said, we have on our learning systems, Moodle is what we call ours, you may call yours Blackboard, and we have a way that we can make these electronic files individually for each student, keeps the FERPA, the privacy. We can send it directly to them and it will house their speeches. Mind blown. So I developed a speech lab. We had never had one before, and now we have 3 lab assistants that are incredible. They've all had my classes. They've all earned a credit of A. They know how to do speeches, and they record the students. How does that work online? Online, that helps the student to actually be proctored, kind of like an exam. And so they don't have to worry about if they're cheating or reading because they have a live person in front of them via online. We send a Zoom link to them, and the student can do it in their home. We also use it on campus. So I brought mine. For every adjunct that teaches public speaking, they get an iPad. They're issued a microphone because we found out that it's much better to boost the sound or you can't really hear it. And these are inexpensive. And then we brought the tripod. And so each of the adjuncts get one of those. They can take them to the on-campus classes themselves. They can upload to our OneDrive if they would like, or they can take it to our speech lab assistants, and the speech lab assistants help them. So what that does is that directly gives that video of that speech, and we have a practice speech, a use speech, which is our introductory speech. We have a basic speech, an advanced speech, and then we have a persuasive speech. All of those are housed in the electronic file of the student. Now the student can watch and critique themselves, and as a professor, I can go back, and if I missed a visual aid or a thesis statement, I can rewatch it as well as insurance for the instructor. So as you can see, let's recap. Volleyball and an iPad. They do have something to do with each other, right? Because that's where I found the iPad at the very beginning. And now iPads are everywhere and they're pretty inexpensive. The process, and I hope the takeaway for you personally, is that you can implement this technology in some creative manner, and you can do it in your college, in your classes, and make it just what your educational process goes for. So I started with lights. Well, ours are fluorescent and they're in our classroom. Camera, well, we don't have that. We have the iPad. Action. Well, the hope is that now you take action.